time. So thank you,
Oh,
everybody, for
God.
tuning into the Indie Game Insider panel here at Dallas Startup Week. This is the gaming and esports track where we are very clearly extremely professional and ready to talk about indie games and curtail a heated discussion on ramen. My name is Justin Varghese. I am the esports and gaming track captain this year for Dallas Startup Week. And I am very excited to introduce an incredible panel that's all about something that is very near and dear to my heart, indie games. I'll be here throughout the chat moderating as well as collecting your feedback and questions. So if you have any questions at any time for our panelists, feel free to chime in and chat. At the end, you'll hear my dumb voice again as I jump on reading those questions out for our panelists to be in the hot seat and to answer those questions. But with that, Nabil, why don't you kick things off and take it away?
Yeah, absolutely. What's up, guys? What's up, chat? My name is Nabil Pervez. I'm the lead PM and head of events over at AOE Creative. And I'm going to be hosting this panel as well as a couple others. You'll probably see me throughout the week. But like Justin said, we're going to be talking indie today. So, of course, we had to get a couple of my friends out here to talk a bit about it. So each one of you guys, if you don't mind, could each one of you please start with an introduction of yourself, maybe a brief outline of your past experience, and your area of expertise. Cool. Storm, you want to start?
I'll give it a go. Hello, everyone. My name is Storm Hughes. I am lead interactive developer over at DevHouse Agency. We operate out of North Dallas. By day, I make AR and VR and XR applications for a wide range of commercial, industrial clients. And then when the sun goes down and I drive home, I make video games. I spend a lot of my time making the video games and figuring out how to make video games. Because no matter how much you know, you always have to learn more in the industry. And then with these people down here, we help run a collective. I had my shirt today, but my cat went on a wall rampage and it got covered in wall, and so I had to change. But I was prepared with my Society of Play T-shirt. But I'm on the board and an organizer for that organization as well. So,
Summer, you go ahead.
I was gonna say you go ahead, honey. I'll go last.
Okay. I'm Tyler Tomaseski. I am one of the co-founders of Polynite Games. I'm also a co-founder of Dream Toaster, which is a new LLC that I'm working on getting spun up. It's official as of like 2 weeks ago. I've been doing full-time indie development and co-development and, just generally interactive software for, depending on how you count, somewhere between 4 and 7 years. 4 years if it's like time that I've been making decent money and I'm really proud of like a business that I've built, but I've been under an LLC struggling to do startup for at least 7 years. But I've been full-time on this for a while. I think whereas everyone here on this panel does software development full-time, all of us go home and do game development. The only difference for me is that I tend to full-time, along with Storm too, do full-time during the day and then go home and then just do the same thing a bunch more at night. So we just don't really do anything else because we're just insane like that. But so I made a game called Interspace. I recently worked on the Doom 1 and Doom 2 ports, working on other projects that I can't talk about, but I've done VR, AR, mobile, Switch, PS4, Xbox One, the full list. Been doing that for quite a while.
And I guess I'll be going last here. So hi, everyone. First and foremost, thank you for both Justin and Nabil for having me be on this panel. Thank you, Michael Sewell, for having this invite for Dallas Society of Play. We're very excited to be here. And then again, my name is Summer Tomaseski. I am married to Tyler Tomaseski, if that's not clear. We met actually at the Society of Play. So about me is that I am a senior software consultant. I have 2 LLCs. Currently, even right now, I'm on a client where I do medical software. I do transport software. I'm at a startup right now for Next Rage custom software. And I've been doing that professionally for 11 years. So during my day, I am a professional American enterprise developer, right? But with the stability and the finances that I get from here, which I absolutely love. I love React Native. I love developing apps. I love, keeping an eye on my team of younglings. I'm a team lead now. Lots of really exciting stuff. I love it. I thrive on it. But when it's time for me to go home, I have my second LLC, which is why I'm on this panel here today, Dragon Glitch Studios, which I am currently working on a project called Mercenary Lido. It is an indie game on Steam Early Access. I've been working on it for a very long time. I absolutely love it. I actually have, we'll be talking more about this, but I know about manufacturing. I know how to get on the Steam store. I know how to print business cards. Like I have my own IP. I absolutely love it. I enjoy it. I also, because of the finances that I get from my day job, Daytime LLC, it's like I'm Clark Kent and Superman during, it's like this night and day kind of shift here. I do like I said, I do the indie development. That's why I'm here. So I have a very different kind of path that I would absolutely love to answer questions on. And I'm very excited to be here. And that's it.
Well, first, thanks all of you guys very much for taking the time. We know that you guys are super busy. So the big thing that I kind of want to run past all of y'all is clearly we're all very passionate individuals, right? We do the 9 to 5, and as soon as the 6 hits, it's jumping back on the grind again. So what got you guys into game dev? Storm, you want to start?
Yeah, it's a really funny story. So being a kid in the modern era, being 13 and growing up on movies like The Matrix and like Office Space and a bunch of like anti-corporate media that's all about how your job can't keep you down. So for some reason, being 13 and that like really sticking with me, I gravitated towards indie anything. I really like the idea of having control and being creative, and I want to make films. Movies are hard to make logistically because there needs to be a camera and a guy holding the camera and yourself, and you can't do that in your room. But Unity and game engines, you can do all of those things
I was gonna
by
say,
yourself.
I don't think it's a lot easier to do game dev.
I didn't know that, but it's physically possible to do it. Whereas, granted, there are plenty of YouTube channels of people making movies by themselves, but there was a buy-in. Whereas I had a computer, and you don't need a tripod and a camera for Unity.
That's perfect.
But that's what got me started. And then little did I learn, oh, hold up, there's like a whole laundry list of things required to do this. But I bought my ticket for the train. I was going. And then you start with one role, and it's diminishing returns, right? You already know something, and so I need to learn an entirely new discipline to keep going. I don't learn that, I already know it.
I'll keep the speaking order if that's all right. For me personally, I was just raised by a father who did his own startup businesses. It's kind of the only life I knew. I didn't really know what a 9 to 5 looked like. I just wasn't raised in a culture where that was a thing. So I think from the start of like me being an adult, I just kind of was like, I'm going to start a business because that's just like what I was going to do. Now I still had to get the game development. I started off wanting to do medicine in college. I realized that I really hated remembering things. I was bad with remembering like chemistry things. I just was bad at it. I just hated the work that went into it. So I was jumping around a few things. I always really liked solving problems. So it's like, all right, like logic, programming, that's probably a good direction to go. Started looking into doing like audio work with like Ableton and programming like custom DAWs and synthesizers and building hardware. I started making controllers. Started emailing some companies. Was like, hey, what kind of requirements do you need to like do this kind of work? Like kind of getting a feel for the industry. And I hated just about every answer I got back. And so at some point I was like, well, it seems like engineering, although I'm good at it, I kind of also hate it. It's kind of a love-hate relationship. I'm really good at it, but it's just like, it sucks. It's a lot of focus and a lot of mental effort. And I was like, well, you know what? I love video games. I've always loved video games. Video games have always been my life. If I'm going to trudge through being an engineer, I might as well do something that I just love. And I think that for so many people in tech, like legitimately, and like Summer can talk to this to a great extent, if you want to make good money and have good hours and like live a happy, fulfilling life, like game development's probably not the industry for you. Like it's a bit of a suicide mission. It's a bit of just
Tired. Yeah,
it's just you love it. It's a labor of love. And I think you'll see engineers switching industries to get into game development, and just game studios know that they're going to pay people less than they would get paid in any other field, because it's just everyone here loves what they're doing. And I think that you'll kind of, you hear that from Storm, you hear that from me. It's just like, we just fucking love video games and just want to make this happen. We love art. We love it's just a part of our DNA. And that's what got me into it. And then of course there's the whole massive story of like starting a business and learning all of those complications. But just I played a lot of N64, SNES, NES as a kid. I wanted to do that.
Absolutely. Video games, it's the same as everyone else here. I was blessed in the fact that my parents were like, they didn't care that I was a girl. If I wanted to get into computers or technology, they said, go for it. Absolutely. You don't need to stay to gender traditional roles. I was very lucky in that regard. My father being a hardworking blue collar man who valued stability, I chose the computer science route. I went to college, graduated, and kind of just fell into the, American enterprise 9 to 5. I, however, was lucky enough to start. This is funny. I get to start geeking out because this is how dorky I am. All right. So power level, revealed here. I really like Neopets a lot. So when I was in college, there are additional like Neopet knockoff sites. For those who don't know what a Neopets is, it's a virtual pet site. You join, there's a community, you hang out, you have a little pet, you take care of it. All of your Neopets are starving. I know it. That's kind of the joke. And I found a group of people. I started literally doing art for them on the side. So I was going to college. I was balancing my internship in software development, and I was doing art on the side. I was just teaching myself to do art. I'm kind of a very strange unicorn where I do both programming and art. I can do both, which is really cool. Not everyone knows that about me, but I can do both because I'm self-taught and I'm a little traditionally trained. So long story short, I got onto another virtual pet site in college where I actually became the programmer. I did not know PHP databases, like Facebook API, PayPal API, Google API. I had to learn it. That was the absolute best internship and one of the highest marks I can look back on. I got into video games because if I didn't know something, I was going to figure it out. And so I worked on this virtual pet site for 2 years, and it launched. I mean, someone bought like $80 worth of virtual goods. It was really weird. I had a business. And then in the last 10 years that I've been making games, again, always on the side, always as a hustle. So I did the virtual pet site for 2 years, graduated college, did a little bit of trying to understand Unity and really didn't fail. That's something else I can talk about. I did some volunteer work for Fractal Fox, which was very popular in the DFW area. We released Greebles, which was a iOS Android game. It's on the App Store now. And then once I learned, because I was helping them out with their work, I was taught Unity from a senior developer on the team, which again, Unity is most people will tell you to use Unity if you are an indie developer. Unity is weird. I didn't like it when I first started it. Now I've been in it for 5 years. I don't know anything else, but that's how I kind of got into it. And because I knew Unity, now I saw how the business was run from Fractal Fox. I was like, okay, I can do this myself. I have the tools, I have the experience. So that is how I got into this indie game thing on my own. And then again, the entire time, my day job, I've changed jobs. I was always senior, always an enterprise. And then I realized that they don't actually go against each other. They're two separate things, and they actually can fuel each other very well. Like the stuff I learn at work, at the day job, I can take to my game studio, and the good lessons about how to treat your people, all of that, I take and I fuel it right back into the day job. Like it's a cycle. It's very different. Not everyone can do it, but I love it. I thrive on it.
So as a bit of a follow-up then, because the consistent theme that I keep seeing more and more frequently is like there's a lot of passion, but there's a lot of motivation as a byproduct that you have to have in order to do the things that you guys are doing. Mm-hmm. It's not easy doing a 9 to 5 and grinding as soon as you get back home for another couple of hours. Mm-hmm. So can you guys talk briefly about inspiration? Like how does that kind of keep you motivated to stay creative, but also consistently on track towards your goals?
Yeah, that's an unanswered question for a lot of us. It's a constant back and forth internally as you develop over time. I feel like it'd be really nice to have like a little business card in my pocket. You pull it out. It's like, oh, that's why I make games. Thanks me. And you put it back and it fuels you again. It's a constant thing that you do. You look inside. For me, initially, it was the fantasy of indie game development, which is very, I was very young at the time. I was 18, 19, and the fantasy of like the indie dev rock star and the making all of your own money, and all the hard work, and you can't wait to do the hard work because you're young and you don't know what work is. And that was the start, but that's very short lived. These days for me, it was taking a break from the development itself and kind of re-experiencing art again, and allowing influences to come back. For a long time, the video games I made were inspired by video games. And so there was that cyclical, I want to make video games inspired by video games to do video game things. And then I kind of forgotten not who I am, but what I like. And then now I've taken a bit of a break, and now I'm getting interested in architecture, architectural theory, art history. You know what I mean? I started reading again. I started getting back on my my philosophy nonsense and reading up on just all kinds of philosophical theories, and having that feed back into the art that I make, and that inspiration lights that fire whenever I experience something. When I watch like Dark on Netflix about time travel, or I'm continuing to read House of Leaves about like architecture and horror, and just it just all that art reminds me like, oh, I want to craft experiences that engage me. I want to make an engaging experience the way I get engaged by media, and that helps me remind myself like, oh, that's why I do what I do. And then separately, as a note, like, you don't have to double down. Like, development isn't the fight between Vegeta and Goku, in which you're Goku and you have to KO Ken to save the Earth. Like, you don't need to double down and go really hard. Like, it's what you enjoy doing. I do it because I like it. When I'm working and things go well, I get a sense of like fulfillment, and that keeps me going. And in the moments where I don't have it, I remind myself that I will get this. But if you're not getting that, don't just push yourself because you chose it a long time ago. Like,
yeah.
Find it.
And I do want to just to step back a second to kind of the premise of it, of having that 9 to 5, because even though, let's say, like, I, like, out of the bunch, like, my day job is like the thing that I also go home and do. I just work a lot. But if you go to GDC, if you talk to a lot of indies, if you talk to the majority of indie companies that are, air quotes, making it, the majority of them are either concurrently working on 2 projects or alternating projects. And that first or second project, depending on how you count them, is always not their dream project. It's always contract work. It's always something that they're doing on the side to fund them working on their dream projects. There are so many original IPs being made by indie developers nowadays that there is an incredibly small percentage of us that are actually making enough money to make a second game with every time that they make a game. That list is incredibly short. So even if you make it, really what making it for most people looks like is finding out a business model where you're spending half of your time, or increasingly all of your time, working on projects that aren't your idea for other people, and then crafting out with a little bit of the extra money that you've got time for the projects that you care about. So that 9 to 5 for indies is almost a requirement. If you're going to start your own business, if you're going to do a startup in games, you're going to need to do work that you don't want to do. Even some of the larger studios in the area, if you look at hell, even Gearbox, they recently did a Penn and Teller game. They're regularly working on intellectual property that's not necessarily their own. Now, granted, they've increasingly gotten larger and larger and larger, and at this point, they're probably just AAA as it gets. But when you look at their history, they're not just working on their dream projects, even when they were still way too big to be indie. Now they're way bigger than that. But like, the majority of us don't do that. What's the one of the studios in the area? They're working on the Dark Crystal game, Bonus XP, right?
Bonus XP.
Yeah. So they're also working on intellectual properties for Netflix, even though they have their own original stuff. I'm sure they would love to be doing. So that doesn't really answer the question of how you stay inspired, but just to say that 9 to 5 is a requirement. And if you can get rid of that, that's incredibly rare. But even doing it full time tends to mean still having a 9 to 5 and still having to have the extra time cut out for your own original stuff.
I think in that, though, there's a built-in inspiration, because a lot of time you're at work doing your work thing. You're like, I can't wait to get home to do the thing.
Yep.
I'm doing this for the reasons for having the job is the other thing. And so therefore the motivation is I want to go home. I want to work on my thing. It's why I'm doing this in the first place. So I can have a home to go to do the thing I want to do.
Yeah. And to be honest, dude, there's some developers that inspiration of like, I got to get home. I want to work on my thing. I can't wait. Like I don't need to do anything else. I don't need to watch TV. I don't need to play games. I'm just going to work on my thing all night. Like, I'm in awe of people that keep that up for years and years, because there's some developers that it just never stops. They just are doing that for just like tens of years at a time. And I don't get that. That's not most people. I think one of the answers is that most of us struggle with that on a daily basis. And it's something that we just have to consistently set goals. And I think that's what gets me through is I have to set goals, because I feel good when I accomplish things, when I check the box, when I get to show my game to someone else and watch them play it and see their reaction and get their feedback. And so for me, like setting milestones of like, all right, I want to make this thing. Here's my big picture, and just creating a fucking big list, pardon my French, a big list of just little things I need to do to get there. And just like every day, I think Summer can probably speak to this a lot, and I'll hand it off to you, Summer. But just like Summer's been really inspiring at this, because one of her mottos is just like you got to commit something once every day. I'll let you talk about it, but like that's a great answer. So you do that.
You see me foaming at the mouth. Absolutely. I'm going to. So yes, Storm and Tyler, absolutely. The big thing that I want to dispel now is I don't believe in motivation. Motivation is not real. I'm just going to dispel that myth right now. It's discipline. It is time management. That's it. Motivation's a lie. It is absolutely a lie. It's like, oh, I need the muse to come to me, and when it comes to me, I'll do my thing. It's like, no. I drag my muse to me, and it's like, we are going to work because I have to get something done today. So again, I have my day job. I kick ass at it. I love it. I love what I do. I love, everything I do for the day job, because that's what I've been doing for years, right? I love it. But when I get home, I have to detox. I have just gotten done doing a 9 to 5. If I had a really, really hard day, I'm going to do art. If I had a light code hard day, lots of meetings, lots of talking to my developers, making sure they're okay, I can go home and I can write code. It just depends day to day. And I because I'm fortunate enough that I do not feel a niche in my game development, I can kind of pick and choose on what I want to do for that day that I feel like I can do without making a mess of things. But no, just to keep it, just to be breveloquent here about all of this, is it's time management and it's discipline. It's motivation's bullshit. Pardon my French. It's bullshit. Just you do it. And there's no excuse. If there's something in the way, I get it out of the way. Tyler can definitely attest to that. Anyone who knows me for a period of time, it's like I am a homebody. I will go out every once in a while, but I got to get hustling. If I don't hustle, I'll go insane. I get that from my dad.
And I do think the tail end on that is just, inspiration is a thing, but game development is really hard, and you're gonna have to do a lot of work that isn't fun. And the fun parts are really easy to stay inspired for, but it's the whole 10% of the work takes 90% of the time, and it's that 10% of the work that's eating up 90% of your time that you don't want to be doing, but you have to do it if you want to release your game. So and that's the gap between doing it as a professional and doing it as a hobbyist, because the hobbyist just ignores that 10%. They're just like, I don't want to do that. I don't care. I'm not going to sell this thing. It cannot have an options menu, but you got to go make an options menu, and you kind of just got to suck it up and do it. So there's not really a way around that. At some point you will not be inspired. And
when you geek out about your game and you say, it's got all these things inspired by this stuff, and you're going to be, all that, all the sci-fi greatness, none of that includes options menus and porting to console and all the input systems and making sure it works on the Xbox and all that stuff. So
I think I like the sentiment of that. So why don't we actually just take this straight back to basics? So for people that are just kind of getting acquainted with indie, let's talk basics. So let's talk different types of indies. Let's talk what it means to be indie right now. And maybe let's talk about maybe stuff that doesn't necessarily fit what we define. So maybe let's start off with talking about different types of indies, because you guys have mentioned different types of indies throughout this conversation. You've talked about solo dev, hobbyists. You've talked about the side hustles. You talked about small projects. Can you break down those buckets a little bit, very briefly and granularly?
You might mind if I lead on this, Storm, for a sec?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think quickly, I think part of it, I don't know where this number comes from, but I think it's a great number, even if it's made up, but it feels about right, which is about 70% of people doing art, be that 70% of, because someone did a poll on Twitter that was a few hundred indie developers responding, and it matched some other people's results, which is about 70% of people don't make enough money to sustain what they're doing right now. So 70% of musicians aren't making enough money to continue being a musician full time. 70% of artists, 70% of game developers. There's only about a third of us that actually make enough money to do what we're doing. And so that has to come from somewhere. And really those different kinds of indies just is kind of a question on whether you even care to get into that 30% and how you're going to get to that 30%. You have your incredibly rare unicorns, which is like maybe like 30 indie studios in the world that are just making enough money from their indie games to continue making indie games. Although obviously me saying 30, I'm probably excluding a large amount of mobile developers, but like gonna pull numbers on my butt, but those are rare. Everyone wants to be that. Very few people are going to get to be that. And these are people that make an indie game and makes a bunch of money, and then they make another indie game, and then they make another indie game, and they just keep doing that. And that's like hardly anyone. Two, you have people that are full-time indies, a bit closer to me, but they have to do contract work. They have to do work for companies like AT&T or like some kind of like large corporation that's local that wants some kind of thing, and then you need to do a contract with them to help augment your income for these other projects. Sometimes that's out of necessity. Sometimes it's just out of stability. If you're going from game to game, some people can get really close to that, but if you mess up one game, suddenly your company's just screwed. So consistently relying on
a diverse income source is always a good idea.
Yeah. So that's like kind of your second, and that can happen for a few reasons. Third, we get into people that have day jobs, but are making money off their side hustle. These are people that are releasing games that are making money. They're trying to build a business, but it may not even be their goal to make it their full time. It's just like having a hobby that makes money. And then four, you're going to have people that are just outright hobbyists. These are students. These are people that like making games for art's sake, maybe. These are people that are maybe even more invested and more free to do it. Actually, these are probably the people that are most free to explore what they want to explore. But they have no intent of making money off their games. They have no intent to make a business out of their game. They're just making games for the love of the craft. And that's the fourth. And like that's kind of the buckets I like. And then the second you leave any of those, it's some kind of categorization of like a larger game studio.
I feel like the only additional one is just like the precursor to all of those, because I feel like any individual four could be like a final state of person. So there's like the aspirant, the game dev aspirant, who's like the you don't know what you are yet and you can move. I think the important point there is that like you can be a hobbyist and stay a hobbyist, and you don't have to be a hobbyist with the goals of moving in the direction, moving, in backwards order of what you just explained, right? You don't have to go from hobbyist to full-time making money from your hobby to then hopping into contract work in your games and then working on your game to hopping into full-time. Like it's not a linear pathway. It's just those are things you could be. And I think it's important to note that you can stop as a hobbyist and be totally happy and also successful, whatever you define success as.
Sure. And that's kind of leading me to the next thought that I'm having right now of like, what does it mean to be indie right now in this current climate? Because I mean, we're talking about a variety of different variables here for what makes indie, right? What does this get defined by resources? Does this get defined by team sizes? Does this get defined by if you're published or not? Is this a situation where you look at things like Fez, right, where it's the single guy, like or small, like super small teams, or do you still see something like Supergiant as someone that still is indie? Maybe they're not huge super triple A's, right? But it's a combined team that puts together a very specific product that it seems like their vision is never compromised by a publisher. So that's the question I want to pose to you guys right now is like, what does it mean to be indie right now in this climate?
I think this is like a huge argument that indies love having amongst ourselves.
We do.
Got you.
I do think there's a little bit of kind of it when you see it a little bit. And I think that the argument kind of comes a bit more when you transcend a certain number of people working on a project, where we start to have the conversation. Sometimes I heard someone say like, oh, indie studios are studios that own their intellectual property. But then like there's some huge AAA studios that own their intellectual property. and that's definitely not indie.
I've also heard arguments about intention. I've heard arguments that like if you're a company that's making mobile games, but when you're designing the property, you're not designing it for like artistic expression. It's and most artistic expression games, most indie games are designed to be marketable. But some people would argue that like there's like a dial of marketability, and when you start compromising creative decisions for marketability and for profit, that's when people start saying, oh, now you're a startup, you're no longer an indie dev, which is a weird conversation to have. The argument there's like the intention of my goal here is to make money and not make my game, therefore you're not indie, is always weird. And I don't, the weird thing is we don't have concrete answers. We can't just like look at it and go, no, you're not indie and you're indie. And we don't want to gatekeep. We don't want to say, well, you don't get to be indie because you want to make money.
You know, it's
clearly I've hit a button here.
Yeah.
No, it's fine.
Michael actually said a word in the chat, which is independent studio. There are many independent studios, but they're not necessarily indie developers. And it's kind of just semantics, but at least for me, I would say that indie is like one of the first things that I have to tell people, because there's a lot of people like doing startups out of college, and I ran into this myself, where suddenly you got like 7 people trying to do a startup. The answer is like an indie game cannot feed 7 mouths. It's just not going to. And if it can, it's like maybe we call it III, maybe we call it AA, maybe we call it AAA, whatever. But if you've got like 10 plus full-time employees, like I don't think most people would call you an indie studio. You're definitely like a small company and a small business, and you've emerged out of being an independent studio. But usually the line for indies is like you're trying to have as few people on your project because you need to reduce the amount of money that you need to make for your company to be viable.
Like a lot of it's intuition, right? Go ahead.
Go ahead, Summers.
It's just like I know that I have to kind of butt in here. Instead of arguing, I'm going to focus less on the what level of income do you own your IP, and more just on a personal level. Is that all of us started, some of us got lucky, some of us were inspired, some of us had mentors that could teach us how to become independent game developers. I personally did not feel like an independent game developer until I filed my own LLC. Once that happened, I was like, okay, I got the little card, I got the paperwork from the Texas comp controller. Okay, I'm an indie game studio. But really, like if you're a hobbyist and you can release like one game on itch.io, like, and you can do that in any language, any game engine. You can do art, you can do writing, you can do anything. You can label yourself as an indie. You can. I just personally couldn't do it until I got the letter that said I have an LLC, and I'm like, okay, I have a studio. I'm an indie game developer now. I can put that on my LinkedIn or whatnot, and it's great. Just a footnote.
It's probably pretty comparable to, and granted, indie winds up encompassing people that aren't even attempting at business. But in the direction, and that's kind of what Summer's saying is, but like in the direction of business of like having an LLC, I think it's probably going to be pretty similar to a conversation on on independent contractors, self-employed people, small, like what is a small business? Like how many storefronts do you need to have to stop being a small business if you own a donut shop? Like if you start to look at like how many employees that involves, it's probably a pretty similar conversation for indies, which is to say that like my dad owned a gym in Florida, and then he owned a second location. He's still a small business. It's just 2 tiny like personal trainer gyms. Like if you're an indie studio and you hire 2 people, you've got employees that aren't stakeholders and owners of the business. Sure. Yeah, you're still an indie. It's just 2 employees. Like that's not a lot. But like where is that number drawn? We don't know. It's just kind of a, but like,
no, I think that's fair.
I always like say Shadows of Colossus got made by like 20 developers. So if you've got 20 developers, I'm like, you're as big as a Sony studio. So like, you're definitely not indie. Right. That's where I draw the line personally. Like double digits starts to smell like something a lot larger.
At some
than
point,
indie
you just become like development studio, right? Like it'd be weird if Cyberpunk 2077 was on the Nindies, like the Nintendo Indies real.
Yeah.
You're like, is that really is that what's hot these days?
I will say this is that on the Nintendo Direct, it's like, oh, look at these indies, and the latest one was like, it was Red Giant Games on their Hades project, and then it was Spiritfarer by Thunder Lotus, and I'm like, you look at the credits for those games, and it's like dozens of people. I'm like, Nintendo, like, and again,
it's the upper end. It's the upper end.
It's the upper. Okay, fine, but I just
it's the 1%. It's the 1% of indies,
and I'm like,
Yeah.
Interesting.
Triple I.
Okay.
We can go for days
Gotcha.
on this. You got to cut us off.
Yeah, you need to
Yeah,
cut us off. You
I
need
was
to cut us
about
off.
to say, because I was about to bring up Black Myth Wukong and see what you guys thought, but we don't have enough time here. Let's now, because I feel like this conversation, we've shifted a lot more into talking about the business side of indie, right? That's the apparent theme that's continuously coming up here. And I think that there's an extra point here that we want to bring up here about, we talk so much about the development of indies, and there's definitely a lot that goes on behind the scenes with the business of indies. Can you guys talk about some of the details that you feel like are being overlooked? Maybe we're talking about things like cash flow. We're talking about things like sales numbers. We're talking about things like team size, how many mouths you can feed, like you guys are saying. And maybe you guys could also talk about contract work, like Tyler, which you mentioned previously.
I would love to hear, actually, just for a talking order on this, like Summer, if you could talk about filing, and then Storm, if you could talk about like releasing RGB, and like I know you hit a wall there, like there's a wall there. Like I would love to hear that ramp between the two of you.
Yeah, the long and short of it for, again, just on filing, right, Tyler? Okay.
Whatever you want. Really.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So filing for an LLC, the first point is like, what is an LLC? Why do you need an LLC? And I will tell you that you need an LLC if you want to get on Steam, because you need a EIN number, which is you will use to open your bank account for your business. Congrats, you are now a business. Opening up an LLC is $300. Just is. You can do the paperwork online. It's 30 minutes of just fill this crap out and send it. It's easy. You will need probably about $50 to open up your bank account. Bank of America, Iberia Bank, doesn't matter. Go do that. In order to get on Steam, it's $100 to get in there. So you're looking at like $400, $500 to get a game on Steam from start to finish. Absolutely not hard. Because we do run a nonprofit, and I am in that nonprofit. It's a Discord channel that we'll be posting at the end of this. You can always ask me or anyone in that room about how to do that filing. It's not, don't let it scare you. Just don't let it stop you. Just go do it. But there comes a point where it's like, I want to make money off of my game, and it's like, congrats, you need to put money into it so you can get money out of it, because you need an LLC for Steam. And people are like, well, can I do stuff off of Steam? And I'm like, yeah, that's great, but it's just like the iOS store, where Steam is going to be making 99% of your sales. So sorry, it's a monopoly. That's life.
I think in that, there was a moment. If you hear tapping, it's raining outside, and there's a little AC unit that sticks out the window. There's we all know like the Dunning-Kruger effect, in which your inexperience in something kind of curves the difficulty, and so as an actor in a system, you aren't afraid of behaving because you don't know how bad it is yet. And I was in that position a few years ago, and a lot of people are in general. They don't know. They're like, oh, me make video game, programming, art, game design, video game. And then at some point in the development cycle, step 7, 8, 9, 10 kick in, where it's like, oh, like my friends are having an expo. Like there's a local convention. So me make game for convention, and people play it, and it's great, and they want more. And you're like, okay. And then step 2 is like, oh, me put game on Steam. And then you unlock the nightmare of like, your bank account. You're like, what? I'm 19. I just want to make video games. It's like, yeah, well, come back with these numbers. And then also, if you want to get on Steam, here's just a text file. And you're like, what is a bat file? And it's like, yeah, here you go. Just fill things in. It automatically signs in. And you have to start learning all of these things. And then all of a sudden, your game needs to be usable for people who don't know you exist. Very frequently, if you're used to showing your game to people, hey, mom, play this. And she goes, how do I play this? And you go, oh, you push the buttons. And then all of a sudden you're running up against tutorialization, making sure it doesn't crash. You're running against menus and systems for saving things and saving settings and integrating that within Steam's API. And surprisingly, when the hard part of the game development is making the game, you're not really prepared for the release of your game, in my opinion. That does not mean you can't do it. I'm not saying don't do it. Just know that if you're struggling with platform code, you're not going to do a good job getting like data structure systems in there.
Yeah.
And that's when it kicked in, but kind of like, you were mentioning earlier, to keep that motivation, you put goals on a timeline, and then when it comes up, you're like, all right, now I have to do this. I have to reach out to people and who can solve this problem for me, and spend my own money paying someone to do it for me so I can do other things. And kind of shed that like solo dev cloak of honor that I made up. I made this by myself, therefore it's special and better. But the user doesn't care who made the game; they just want to play game. And you know, I guess we all kind of clap for Toby Fox. Like, he made Undertale by himself, which he did not.
I do not believe it.
But like, the average player isn't like, wow, this game is so good because someone made it by themselves. They're just enthralled with the narrative and the meta and the story and the art. And there's like, and then there's the Pandora's box of just things that games need to get done. But we just love the art, the design, you know, the problem solving. It's so much.
From a design standpoint, like, you got to do a start screen, you got to do saves, you got to support all these weird computers that have weird specific technical problems. So you wind up buying laptops that you don't need to be able to figure out why that laptop's having a problem. There's this huge list of just like, because you got to imagine, like, at one point you're creating a video game that is fun, and then on the other hand, you are making software that is intended for people's devices and needs proper support and testing. And just to do some like quick napkin like math, and I'm not even getting to like what it takes to accomplish these problems, because we're talking about like development problems that you don't expect and then business problems that you don't expect, and there's a huge set of things that you need to do to solve these problems. And granted, this isn't to scare anyone off, it's just to say like, this shit's hard, and like, you should like get in. I think if you want to get into this industry, the biggest piece of advice I can give anyone is to get someone that is already doing it and get them to become like an advisor, to become a mentor, to help. You can just talk to them for 1 hour once a month, to just be like, let them just vomit the things that you're not thinking of on you. And because, like, to do some quick napkin math, like, all right, let's say that you decide to go totally solo. You're gonna do all the art on yourself. You're gonna do all the code on yourself. You're gonna do all the sound by yourself. The only mouth you need to feed is your own. You're soloing this crap. All right.
You fill all of the niches.
You got to file for a business. You got to pay Steam. You got to buy some hardware upgrades at some point because your hard drive goes bad. You need to file your taxes every year.
Right.
You're probably like a $2,000 in a year just on like stuff that you wish you didn't have to deal with, but you have to because like business costs. So that's like $2,000. And let's say you want to like make $50,000, which like is like a decent amount of money in Dallas, but it's not a lot of money. It's kind of like,
you can live on that.
Yeah, you can live on 50. You could live on a lot less. You could live on a lot less in Dallas too. But you know, let's say you've got student loans. Let's say you've got shit to pay off. You know, so $50,000. Like, all right, like every year that you work on this game is $50,000 that you need to make. And if you're making this game by yourself, you're probably only going to be allowed to sell it for $5. So your game costs $5. Steam takes a third of that. So you're probably only making like $3.50 off of each game sale.
Right.
So let's say that you somehow finish your game in 1 year. So you need to make back $52,000, and you're only making $3.50 on a sale. You got to sell your game to 15,000 people. You got to get 15,000 people to buy your game.
And then that's at the end. And then there's another year you're looking at that also needs to get paid for, because you just finished a year of development, and that's back costing you 52,000. Then there's another 50,000 you're looking down the barrel of.
So then so then you need to sell 30,000 copies. Okay, so you're not great at marketing. You could figure it out. Maybe you figure out from ad buys. Maybe you do some good viral marketing. You've been posting on Reddit every day. You've been posting on Twitter every day. You've been posting on Instagram, which every game developer neglects, including myself. Like, you've been pushing yourself. You've been building up community. You have your own Discord. You've been doing this on the side. You're dedicating an hour a day throughout development. Do you still think you can sell 30,000 copies? And like, that's a tough fucking question. Like it's hard to get there. So you probably want to partner with the publisher. So you wind up pitching your game to publishers. You're going to spend time doing this. You're wasting time talking to publishers. They're going to want 30% of your revenue just to help buy some ads for you and send, you know, ad copies to reviewers to make sure enough people get in it. Suddenly, you know, you're making 70% less of the thing that's already cut back. And all this to say, like, you know, if your question is like, what's the unexpected work that you need to do? The unexpected work that you need to do is run a business, file your taxes, market your game, do the hard game development shit that no one wants to do, but people will hate your game if you don't do. Like, it's just like, run a business. You can go to places like this that are just talking about tech startups. And even if a bunch of people are talking about like tech, like, you know, all right, okay, you don't care about like web development and tech stacks, you skip those talks. But anytime someone's talking about business, like what it takes to do a startup, like those things are applicable. Like, it's like, but you gotta, like, you know, run a business. Which is why that whole, like, that last category of game developers, of people that just do it for the sake of art, is like super fucking appealing, because making a living doing this sucks, and it's
Right.
really nice to not have to.
Right.
So
But I will say this is that I do want to stop you there, honey, on it's not hard. I don't want to, again, it's not our job to try and scare people that it's hard and you can't do this, okay? Landing rockets on the moon is hard, okay? That's complex. Running a business is unfamiliar and you are going to make mistakes, and that is okay. Congrats. I have made mistakes. I am still making mistakes. That is okay. I'm still hustling though. Don't ever let anyone lie to you and say, oh, I've run the perfect business and I'm great and I'm making all bank. It's like, no. It's make the mistakes. Keep trucking. It's just unfamiliar. And again, as Tyler said earlier, you absolutely can find resources, then we will help you. We love helping. I would have not gotten my game on Steam if it wasn't for Storm. Storm got his game on Steam and I was like, shit, if he can do it, I can too. That's what the community gives for you, right? And yeah, you are indie. You do not fill any sort of specific role. You are all of it. And that's great. Some people love that. If you don't, maybe you need to go into AAA, and that's fine. It's just a decision you yourself have to make.
some of the indies that are going to have the easiest time getting into this are going to be the people that have eliminated as much unknowns from it as possible before even hitting the ground. If you're trying to build a business, that is. So like a lot of indies that are very successful are people that have worked in the industry for years, people that have been software engineers, people that have shipped like AAA titles, and they decide to kind of cut out on their own. Now, it's still hard for them, but they're going to know a lot more about the work that goes into software. And at the very least on the development side, they can solve for those problems. But, you know, if you're someone that was like me that's doing a startup straight out of college, you've never even had a job in the industry, and you're just like, screw it, I'm starting a business. You're gonna sprint headfirst into every wall, and you're gonna be a bloody mess at the end. It's tough,
Right.
but you can do it.
Yeah.
Just boy, I wish I'd gotten an advisor and gotten a counselor and a mentor and been a lot sharper about that a lot earlier.
So a couple things that I want to quickly plug here. Shout outs to DSOP, Dallas Society of Play, as well as IGDA, because these folks that you see around me are DSOP folks. I'm IGDA, and together we do a lot of stuff in the local community to try to help people connect them from like indies or people that are aspiring developers to opportunities, and try to help each other out
Right.
as a community. That said, JV, I think we're in a spot where we can take a handful of questions. They
Right.
got to be short ones.
Okay.
But I know that we got about 7 minutes left. So if you have any juicy ones, let's throw them up.
Yeah, more like 5 minutes, but let's speed run this really quickly.
Yeah, let's speed run,
please.
speed run
Most
strat.
important, the biggest question I saw that I think would be really helpful for a lot of folks comes from, and I apologize if I mispronounce your name, Chimeria. Chimera asks, what is a good time for my little guy to mess around and start creating games? He would like to learn. How can I help him with getting into it?
I feel like I should answer that question
Do it.
as a little guy. I tried making video games when I was 13 using ActionScript 3 and Flash. Very difficult, very hard. The biggest thing was that I had come up with a imagination of what it meant to make games, and when I found out that that wasn't what it was, I got disinterested. In my head, I thought I knew what it was, and then when the thing wasn't what that was, I was like, no, I'm good. So whenever they're old enough to kind of accept what the reality of the work is,
Right.
and then I always tell people whenever they can understand it, basic algebra, if you can get the concept of X and the concept of Y, and that you can do things to X and it's still X, but it's also a different number, that's all you need.
Yeah, Storm's not speaking to
Um,
like the difficulty of starting a business, just like, you know,
How I
Making
start.
video games.
basic
How I
algebra.
start.
And there's educational basic engines like Construct that let you graphically drag and drop nodes together to make games.
Mhm.
Honestly, if you got a kid that wants to try making a game, go for it. Like you can get RPG Maker on the Switch. You can make video games on your Switch. A lot of people start by doing level editors. Get a game like N++ or Mario Maker and let them make games without worrying about the technical constraints. Start
Right.
working on design, making levels,
Right.
like feel like you're making a game without solving any actual technical problems.
Right.
Start getting them in the creative headspace, and then you can ease them into making something original and something like
Yeah.
Construct 3.
Okay, next question. Sorry, try to keep us going along.
It's a lightning round. Each of y'all go around and just say the name of the game that you have that's on Steam.
Right.
Mine's titled Really Good Battle, all one word. I have it linked and I'll post it there. Don't at me, okay? I'm not good at naming.
Tyler.
I made a game called Inner Space. It's on Switch. You can look it up.
And then my game is in Steam Early Access. It is called Mercenary Leto.
Awesome. You guys.
And then I believe we're all doing a game jam right now, actually, too. So you can go to Society of Play to see the game jam that we're doing, where we're all making games in 7 days, and you can see
Right.
what we make
Yeah.
there.
The whole
Yeah.
community.
Yeah, whole community.
Y'all, this has been such an incredible conversation. One's in the chat, everybody. Give it up for our amazing panelists for seriously having such a good conversation. I feel bad having to end this. I wish we had more time because I could honestly hear these folks continue to talk really in depth about the industry as
Right.
well as their personal projects for as long as possible. Like I
We do
said,
every
make sure
Thursday.
you
Yeah.
follow the Dallas Society of Play. Make sure
Yeah.
you're plugged into Dallas's IGDA chapter as well.
Right.
We're going to take a really brief break here. And when we come back, the next panel is going to be about what's next for the future of collegiate esports. And as always, feel free to continue the conversation on LinkedIn as well as the Dallas Startup Week 2020 Slack channel. Thanks, y'all.
Right.
See you again in a
Thank
couple
you.
minutes.
Once.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. It was
Oh yes, you want us to leave.
so good. So
Yeah.
good. I
Yeah,
feel
yeah.
so
Yeah,
bad,
they always
man.
they're always good. They're always
Yeah.
good. But no, it's
We're a
just
verbose bunch.
we're very, very chatty.
Oh,
It's
but it
just a
was
long-
oh,
Go ahead.
so good. Like I was just listening here and I was like, this is just all fire. Like I had like a thread in the chat where I'm just like taking notes of quotes and I it's almost like I couldn't stop writing at some point. So it's like, Jesus
Right,
Christ,
right.
man. Like it's just so much.
And
And
it's
then there was, of
Sure.
course, the conflict where someone was like, "Motivation isn't real," and I'm just sitting here feeling so motivated by
It's not real.
it's temporary, man.
Yeah,
Not real.
It's,
Not real.
but it's tough because
Yeah.
it's the people that do their best work when they feel the shittiest that make it the furthest in this industry, and like that's
Yeah.
like game is hard, man. Like
yeah.
it's tough.
Game is hard.
Great. Some people just, like I said, some people just stay inspired all the time, and I
Mm-hmm.
don't understand them. Like they're crazy to me. They exist, but I just don't get it.
Yeah.
All right, we got to vacate, right?
Yeah,
we got to
we
get
gotta
out of
vacate. Get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
Okay, we love you.
All
Bye,
right,
guys.
Have a good afternoon, everybody.
Bye.
See you guys.
Take care.